Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hey, Eliza.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Jonathan, Melissa,
Welcome, Madam Chair.
Angela.
Thanks, Jonathan. Happy to be a part of this group.
We are happy to have you. All right, give me 1 second here. I'm going to get up our agenda and all that, and we'll give a few moments for folks to trickle in.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, Angela.
Morning.
Morning, Daisha. Good morning, Shante.
Morning, everyone.
All right, we are just one short of quorum, so maybe one more minute or so, then I'll call us to order. Okay, Vega is hopefully trying to get in here in just a moment or two, and then we will have quorum.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Anthony. Morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning.
Okay, well, it's 10:05. We'll just go ahead and start. even though we don't have quorum. Hopefully we'll get that here in a few minutes. But good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan Crooms, current chair of the Performance Subcommittee meeting. Thank you all for making time in your schedules, as always, for our monthly meeting. And today we do have, I would say maybe a little bit, at least I think it's going to be a little bit lighter agenda. We'll find out. So first off, just jumping in, we do always make room for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment? Okay. No public comments today. The next item on the agenda are our approval of minutes, but we do not yet have quorum. So what we're going to do is we're going to bypass that. And we're going to go to the fourth item on our agenda, which is the presentation of the proposed housing first evaluation for the 2024 COC competition. So you all may recall that for the upcoming 2024 COC competition, we talked about in the last meeting that we're going to need to have some sort of housing first evaluation. Of course, this year, we did it through the cross COC evaluation, which made for a great addition to the COC collective application. Next year, we obviously don't have anything in the works that big, and we do need to do a housing first evaluation, at least as I understand it, on one of our projects. So Lloyd Schmeidler has put together a potential, proposed evaluation tool, which he would like to present. And we're not going to vote on this today. We're going to give you all time to spend with it. But the idea would be that we look at voting on this in November's meeting. So that being said, I am turning it over to you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning again, everyone. So I've shared my screen. Would you confirm that you can see it?
I can see it.
Very good. So hopefully it's large enough on your screen. So, so the genesis of this proposed housing assessment survey and tool would be that I've started searching over the internet for prospective tools that could be used. The challenges, some of you may have been involved with the cross COC evaluation process that we did in the spring. HUD basically provided that tool. It is a very thorough tool. It's a macro enabled Excel file that looks at things, but it is pretty complicated and requires quite a bit of understanding of the tool itself, as well as housing first. And I felt that we needed some way of perhaps simplifying the assessment to enable us to do assessments. And so I ran across this tool that I've modified and edited and adapted in several ways, but the basics of it were developed in the 2012-2013 period by Dr. Sam Severus, who's one of the originators of the whole housing first, housing plus kind of concept of not moving away from previous approaches to helping people experiencing homelessness to regain housing. The big change was that prior really to the development of housing first approaches in probably the 1990s into the early 2000s, the approach was one of, well, if people are homeless, it means they're not ready for housing, and so we need to get them housing ready. And so there was big emphasis on transitional housing programs that people would often be in for months and sometimes a couple of years at a time before they would move into housing. And Dr. Severus and others kind of turned it on their head and suggested that people can be successful in permanent housing if we move them into housing quickly and provide the support services that they need throughout that period to maintain housing. And so that concept of housing first and that strategy of housing first has been fully embraced by our federal partners at Housing and Urban Development, and we are still in the process, I would say, of learning to what it means for the Durham COC to embrace housing first approaches throughout our system. Housing first is applicable both to permanent supportive housing projects and to rapid rehousing projects. In all cases, we are encouraged to move households experiencing homelessness back into housing as quickly as we can, and then when they are in housing, provide the support that they need to move into housing. So this is I'll briefly review the tool. We are proposing to use it in the first quarter or first half of 2024. Seeking, part of the challenge would be to identify volunteers who would be trained through potentially through our COC lead agency staff and or with our HUD TA consultants to use the tool to walk through it and understand how the tool could be used to interview particularly staff potentially at a COC funded rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing project, and then to develop kind of a score of the fidelity to housing first approaches that the tool used. In the development of the tool that I've edited and modified, there was more of an emphasis on some clinical terms, more appropriate perhaps for permanent supportive housing projects in larger urban contexts where a permanent supportive housing project might have 100 or more units and have opportunities to have an on-site psychiatrist or on-site nurse or things like that. That's obviously not what we have in Durham. So I've edited out references to clinical approaches for the most part in the project or in the tool. I've also added, and I want to thank my colleague Anthony for encouraging me or inviting me to look at the Housing First assessment tool that HUD released and that we did use for the assessment earlier in 2023 through the cross COC process. And I did add a few questions from that hopefully will work. The basic framework of the tool is to offer the interviewers generally 4 or so choices in answering a particular question. And the questions would be ordinarily, in my vision, questions that in an interview with the staff and or as we did with the cross COC evaluation, potentially with project participants, also could be asked to get a sense for kind of really what's going on in the project. There's 4 or 5 components to the tool, or themes, you might say. The first one is housing process and structure, which kind of equates to how participants are housed in the project. What kind of choices do they have? First question is, how does the program determine the type of housing a participant will live in? Some of these hopefully would be pretty easy for interviewers to develop answers for. Second question, what neighborhood will people live in? Does the program assist participants with furniture? Kind of three options there rather than four. And you can see that the point values of each of the responses are point values that I added to the survey that Dr. Severus and others had initially drafted. And the point values, then obviously the highest point value would be the preferred answer. And the preferred answer would be one that would be in line with housing first strategies and principles. How long does it take to move a participant into housing? And there's a four-point scale, but we're giving a premium currently. Again, it's up to the committee to approve the use of the tool and to approve each of these areas. Premium for moving people within 1 month would be a 5-point premium, and within 3 months would just be 2 points. The next area is the relationship between housing and services are related, how they're related in the survey, how they kind of work together. And the first 3 questions in this section of the tool basically, we can talk further about it, but the idea would be that these are kind of essential components of housing first approaches and strategies, is that there are not requirements to gain access to a permanent independent scattered site apartment. And so anything less than that would be considered a subtraction from what the project ordinarily should be doing. So we're not awarding points for a response that says meeting responsibilities of a standard lease, but we are subtracting values for other options that a project might have. And that holds true as well for question 7, as well as question 8. Question 8 is only worth 5, would be a minus 5 points, where question 6 and 7 are a minus 10. Positive points are awarded for question 9 around how programs help participants maintain their housing, which seems really important. Question 10, again, a 4-point scale from 0 to 3 for the program actions that the project does when participants might lose their housing and what they do in response to that. Questions 10 and 11 are somewhat similar, but the key questions are key part of the question is the phrase underlined, or part of the sentence underlined. First, question 10 is regarding housing. What does the project do? And question 11 is, what does the project do regarding services when participants lose housing? The next set of questions concern service philosophy. How does the program determine services that are provided to participants? What are the requirements for taking medications or participating in treatment if people will have serious mental illness? We know that many of our particularly permanent supportive housing participants do have mental illness and mental challenges, and so we're asking what the requirements are. Similarly, 14, we have high rates of people with substance abuse or substance use disorders. Probably I need to edit that to substance use disorders rather than abuse. So that's a question about that. And then what's the program's approach to using substances, etc. Questions, and the longest really section of the tool concerns the service array. What are the kind of services that the project provides to people in the project, as well as how well the services connect people to the broader community, helps people connect to other networks, etc. So question 18 is one that we took from HUD's housing first assessment tool, and tried to come up with that some options for that, particularly around cultural aspects and what's happening. Services provided in ways that allow for diverse participant schedules. The idea there is that if there are families in a particular project, that services would be provided in such a way that parents could care for their children, but it also could incorporate what happens if people are, single adults are working. What does the project do to accommodate work schedules and things like that? Those are some of the basics. Interested in education, interested in volunteering. Idea here would be that, again, it's part of the focus on what's the project doing to help people integrate into the community. Are they exploring employment opportunities? Are they exploring ways that participants perhaps could make contributions within, even in a permanent supportive housing project where people do have disabilities? Are there ways that the project might look at helping people, assess their interest in volunteering and getting them connected to volunteer opportunities? Services, etc. Paid peer support specialists. HUD, we know, is increasingly focusing on how well our projects, as well as our COC, is taking advantage of the lived experience and the lived expertise of people who have experienced homelessness. And so this question acknowledges that. Social integration, again, is a key. Looking at what happens if people relapse, if they have a period where they need to be hospitalized or they go into substance use treatment. What is going on with that? We also, so we can talk about any of these sections, any particular questions that committee members may have. Just doing a quick overview. Finally, the last section concerns the team structure and the human resources devoted to the program or project. Question 29 is not scored. We're not suggesting a preference, why we're not scoring it, or whether staff have individual caseloads or have shared caseloads. We are scoring the participant to staff ratio, both for PSH projects and rapid rehousing projects, although the understanding would be that PSH projects, since people in PSH would have disabilities, the staff ratio should be smaller than a rapid rehousing project that might have a staff ratio of, for example, 25 participants to 1 case manager. Would be expecting a smaller ratio for permanent supportive housing projects. giving points for trainings that the projects might be offering, encouraging some of these that again, I think this was carried over from the HUD's assessment tool. Face-to-face contacts, certainly not necessarily a requirement as such. People don't necessarily need to have a case manager, but are they at least being in contact with program staff on a regular basis, even if formal case management is not happening. So those are some of the basics. Question 37 is basically an opportunity for staff to tell the interviewers anything else that they'd like to share about the project. And then we've added a scoring table. I think I've added up the maximum points possible correctly, but sometimes that can be a challenge. Slightly different point values for PSH and rapid rehousing projects on the service array section. So we have a different score there. Again, the citation is basically this Housing First Fidelity Survey was published back in, I think about 2013, as it says here, by Dr. Sam Severis and other colleagues. So we left that in. Again, I think the goal would be once the Performance Management Committee approves the use of this tool, modified as the committee may wish, to then begin recruiting volunteers who are not connected, not staff of any of the 5 or 6 organizations that are currently implementing COC funded projects, that we would recruit other volunteers from the broader community to be trained in the use of the tool, and then to line up interviews potentially with both participants in projects as well as staff to do an interview and get responses from the projects for each of the questions on the survey. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Jonathan.
Right. Thanks, Lloyd, for your presentation. I think we've just had a few other folks join us, so I just want to reiterate that we are already having to think about 2024's collective COC application. And so in place of having the cross COC Housing First evaluation, we are looking to do an internal one within our own COC, because we do need to provide a Housing First evaluation as part of the collective application that we submit every year in the fall. So this is a proposed scorecard. We are not planning to take a vote today. Really, what we would like to do is field any questions, have any discussion about this that at the time here in the moment, but also to give you all a couple weeks to spend some time with it and to email suggestions to Lloyd, so that come November's meeting, we can potentially take a vote. So that's sort of a brief overview where we're at with this. Does anybody have any reactions or questions at this moment to this proposed scorecard?
Jonathan, if I may, I wanted to add one more point, and that would be that after the committee approves the use of a tool like this, a follow-up decision point for the committee will be to determine how we might use the results of the survey in kind of the official, particularly in the official ranking process for ranking projects for funding in next year's COC competition. The options, I think, would be to either include the total points available currently on this survey in an overall scoring, basically adding the 106 or 114 points to what would be on the other evaluation tool that we've been using, and we'll be talking about next, to develop a overall score, to take a fraction, a percentage of this score to add it to the other score, or to not add this score at all, but just to have the Housing First evaluation stand completely separately from the official or from the evaluation that ranks projects for the COC ranking and tiering process during the competition. So that's an important consideration, going to be an important consideration as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lloyd. Floor is open for comments. All right, we got our first hand there. Eliza, floor is yours.
Thanks, Jonathan. More of a question to understand context. So from what I understand in conversations, there is an interface with private landlords. And so I think I'm just curious about, like, and maybe I'm totally wrong on the private landlord piece, but like with rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, some of those, from what I understand, some of those units, the private landlords have thoughts about what kind of support needs to be a part of that. And I'm just curious if it interfaces with this evaluation, and if it's something that's been considered when creating these different evaluation points.
So you're wondering if there could be, well, it sounds like maybe we're looking at a question, potentially a question about adding a question about support to landlords as part of the housing process.
Well, so I may be wrong in my initial understanding, but what I thought was happening was that private landlords were less likely to work with permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing because, with rapid rehousing because they preferred permanent supportive housing, and it seemed like they had some preferences that encouraged them to interface with the system. And so I'm curious, some of these questions and point values kind of create a catch-22 when those systems are interfacing, or if that like base understanding of mine is just off.
No, I think your assessment is right. I think landlords do prefer to work with permanent supportive housing because they have the permanent subsidy and they do have the permanent support as long as the client wants that in terms of social work support, whereas rapid rehousing, it is temporary assistance and temporary case management. I would say I will have to think about that. And what I would also say is if, because we're going to spend time reviewing this, outside of today's meeting, if there is a suggestion you might have on either shaping or creating a question that could capture some of that, that might be helpful. Lloyd, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you've said it well. If Eliza or anyone else on the committee has thoughts on what should be added, what should be subtracted, now's a good time to make your thoughts known. I think again, it's this is a suggestion. It's not. We think the important thing is I think to develop a tool that meets the needs for housing first evaluation. I would say that our intention would be that all of our COC funded projects would be evaluated with the use of the tool. Like HUD in this year's COC competition made it clear that it was expecting a housing first evaluation of COC funded projects, and we had to attach to the collaborative application a copy of the evaluation of at least one project that was evaluated. But the precise questions, I think certainly there are differences between how rapid rehousing and PSH projects implement housing first approaches, and Eliza makes a good point as to something that perhaps is not completely captured in this current instrument.
All right, Tracy's got her hand up. Go ahead, Tracy. Hey, Tracy, you still with us?
Anything, is it okay if I stop sharing?
Sure, go ahead. All right, we'll see if maybe Tracy has stepped out for a second. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. Much better.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Just had a quick observation based on the information that was shared. I think that's I think the tool is useful in terms of really trying to glean whether or not organizations are practicing housing first. While we know the theory that undergirds the housing first philosophy is pretty sound, the practice sometimes is hard because of the nature of the individuals that we serve, coming from any part of the housing continuum. I wonder whether or not this particular tool would be best served to be used either biannually to assess whether or not organizations can, receive feedback regarding how they could better improve, or, think about their processes as it relates to practicing housing first versus it being a part of the annual application. And if so, if we aren't going to use it, is there a program improvement or improvement process someone or an organization could utilize to be able to take that feedback and be able to make those changes or modifications to their program to be able to adjust to meet whatever benchmark the city or the COC is setting, and so that everyone is meeting that moving forward. I think having a tool is one thing, but not being able to put parameters around that, I think creates a problem for organizations being able to make realistic changes and also meet the expectations of the COC and HUD in general.
Other comments, thoughts? Well, these are all things that we can certainly revisit. And I mean, and again, if you all have suggestions as to how some of these questions could be tweaked, I mean, certainly our providers, like Tracy and Shante and you all are doing this firsthand. So I hope you all will spend some time with the tool and give us some more feedback. And we will, assuming that we do adopt a tool at the next meeting, we will have to decide as a committee how often we want to use it. So Tracy, we will revisit that concern. I do, whatever we decide, my understanding is that we at least have to have something housing first wise to submit overall. Even if we choose, am I correct on that, Lloyd? Even if we choose not to integrate this into the prioritization of projects for ranking purposes. We still got to have something at a basic minimum. So, take your time in reviewing this over the next couple of weeks. Lloyd, what kind of deadline do you need in terms of to incorporate feedback?
The next committee meeting is on November 9th, so I think we could get feedback by the end of October 31st.
Okay.
Give us sufficient time, I think, to make any modifications, assuming they're not all that many, but.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So we'll, as a committee, we need to try to give our feedback to Lloyd by October 31st, and that way he can incorporate it, and then we can revisit the scorecard at that meeting. Even at a basic level, regardless of what we decide, we're definitely going to have some help in terms of evaluating, at least doing the minimum evaluation for our COC applications. So if be thinking whether or not that's something that you might be able to do. I certainly am happy to volunteer as always. So yeah, be thinking about it, and we'll revisit this item next month. All right. So if nothing else on that, we'll go ahead and drop back to the previous item of the approval of last month's minutes. And now that we have a quorum, great thing is that we've added a couple new members, so our quorum requirements are growing. So this is great. But we have quorum now. So what I would like to do is have us take a look at those minutes and go ahead if there's any errors or things that need to be added or adjusted. Let's go ahead and hear those, and then hopefully if no more, then we'll take a motion to approve them. We do need to we did get some information. Shanta and I both got some information yesterday on the list of participants. So we do need to edit that to make sure that accurately reflects that. That's the only edit I have, suggestion I have at this moment. Any other edits?
Hey, Jonathan, I can't find the raise my hand feature for some reason. But I know I just wanted to confirm that the few people that did need it to be added were Melva Henry, Deja Shanks, and Melva Henry, Deja Shanks, Jeff Rawlings, and Diamond Riley needed to be added.
Okay.
To September's minutes.
Perfect. So whoever makes the motion, we can include that as part of the motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay.
With including those names.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Angela to approve the minutes with the additional names as provided by Shante. Any other discussion on this item?
Jonathan, this is Vega. I'd like to second that motion, please.
All right, we have a second from Vega. Let's go ahead and vote in the chat box. Motion to approve minutes. Oops. Get that to everybody. There we go.
And Jonathan, this is Vega again. I'm having some challenges with accessing my chat, but I am voting to approve. As soon as I get to the chat, I will get that in there.
Okay, I will. In fact, I'll put in a little message saying Vega recorded her vote to approve by voice.
Oh, I found it. It's finally. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
No problem. Thank you. All right, minutes have been approved, so we will move on to the next item, which is a presentation of a proposed permanent housing scorecard for evaluations in 2024. So I know we're in October, but really 2024 is really not that far away. So we've got to start thinking about it. So I'm going to turn that over to Lloyd to give us a little presentation on some updates he is suggesting to the scorecard we used last year.
Good. Thank you, Jonathan. Get back to the top of the tool. So we've been using this basic format for several years now to evaluate COC funded permanent housing projects semi-annually or twice a year. The first evaluation typically we do in the January through March, April period, wrap it up by end of April. We use the results of that evaluation to determine whether any project should be placed on probation, considered for reallocation due to poor project performance, or also be recognized for outstanding performance as a COC funded permanent housing project. The instructions have been clarified a little bit to reference a new component that we're suggesting. I discussed this with Jonathan in preparing to revise the tool from 2023 to 2024. And the big revision would be to add a section on equity. In the committee members may be aware that HUD also is increasingly asking COCs to look at how equitable their continuum is in addressing the needs of people of different racial and ethnic groups, as well as different gender identities. And so we took some questions that the Balance of State COC in North Carolina is using to look at equity within their applicants for COC funding, and we use the questions in evaluating new project applicants in the COC competition in 2023. We're proposing that we add those questions in the second evaluation of this year, in that the responses are getting information about project equity would not easily come from the annual performance report that is the basic report that we use to compute most of the objective scores, but that the proposal would be that we ask renewal applicants as well as new project applicants during the actual COC competition for information that would allow us to answer the equity questions that we'll review here in a few moments. That is the big change within this evaluation tool. There have been some minor adjustments, tried to clarify some of the instructions that may not have been as clear as they could have been. And also, I've realized as I've gone through it over the last week or two, and earlier today actually, that some of the goal or benchmark goals in the performance scoring range and points possible did not completely align with the 2022 approved performance benchmarks that were approved by the HSAC. And so I've made some adjustments on those. For example, I think earlier today I adjusted question 2B, exits to positive housing destinations for rapid rehousing, to 80%, which is in line with the performance measure approved by the HSAC. So there have been some adjustments like that. I hope most of the committee members, I think, are familiar with previous iterations of this tool for previous years. I'm not necessarily going to spend a lot of time on reviewing it, reviewing those sections, but we'll come down to the section on equity, which we can perhaps spend more time on. I'm also thinking of hopefully going to have a new version of this tool for the committee with the edits that have been made. This kind of header of columns A through M. Some of the editing that's been done, it's not clearly at the top of each page of particularly of component 1, which concerns performance. So I'm going to try to make some corrections on that. Component 2, I don't think has had any significant changes from what we did in 2023. And let's see, I am suggesting some changes in component 4 on HMIS. What I've done here is a couple of things. One is I've tried to align the goal or the benchmark with the HMIS at NCCH error rate goals that have been publicized and have been communicated to our HMIS participating agencies and projects. And so there's 12 data elements, not including name, which have a goal for a percentage error rate of less of 5% or less. And then there's a couple of them, notably Social Security and exit destination of the universal data elements that have goals of having an error rate of 10% or less. Part of it is recognition that many households seeking assistance don't like to share their Social Security number. And then also there's a data element of DV history that is not a universal data element, but HMIS at NCCH does have a data completeness goal of that rate being less than 5%. So I've changed questions 19A and 19B to from what people may recall from previous years, where 19A was looking at the error rates, I think, of 14 data elements, and looked at whether it was 5% or less. And then question 19B had been an issue of, did any of those data elements have error rates above 10% or less? And so we changed that out. And in timeliness, I've also adjusted the timeliness, question 20A and 20B, to separate out project entry records from project exit records. And again, this is in line with the timeliness benchmark for the HMIS at NCCH. Basically, the goal is that 100% of project entry and project exit records are entered into the system within 6 days. And so we're suggesting a full credit if project records are entered within those 6 days. We could increase this to 100% if the committee wished to, which would align completely with the goal for the HMIS. And then this coming down to component 5, this provides the 15 points. See, there's, I think, 11 questions, maybe 12 questions. Count 2, 6, 9, 11 questions. Some of them have values above 1 point, although many of them are one point. And these would be, again, questions that would be asked as part of the application for renewal projects during the competition, and we could answer them in that second phase. So that would be a significant addition to the evaluation tool that we've not had in previous evaluations of our renewal projects. It would align with what we did ask in 2023 of new project applicants, and I think would hopefully be scored well by HUD in its scoring of our evaluation process. So with that as an overview, I'll turn it back to you, Jonathan. We will plan to have a final proposal for an evaluation tool for our renewing permanent housing projects presented to the committee in November, and then have the committee approve it at its December meeting. Much of the tool is completing much of the tool is really done by the COC lead agency staff. At least 2 of us, sometimes 3 of us, review the scores and make sure the scoring is accurate, and then that's presented to the evaluation subcommittee and the performance evaluation committee as a whole in March or April, depending how quickly we get it done, for your review and approval and any follow-up that might be needed. Back to you, Jonathan.
All right. Thanks, Lloyd, for that presentation. Just like the previous scorecard, the Housing First evaluation, we want you all to take some time to review it and give any feedback to Lloyd by October 31st. But if there are questions now, concerns, reflections on it, the floor is open. All right, Tracy, go ahead.
Quick question. You may have said this, Lloyd. Is the BIPOC questions in relation to what HUD is trying to gather from COCs right now in terms of equity, inclusion, and diversity?
There is an emphasis on equity within the continuum of care process, and also concerns about people with lived experience, and so we're trying to reflect that in the suggested equity questions. I mean, again, the committee could choose to delete any number of them, all of them if existing. The question around continue to have the question in the tool from previous years as to what percentage of people seeking assistance from our projects or being admitted into our projects are ethnic or racial minorities. That is not scored by the committee, and I suppose on some point you could potentially consider moving that question from its existing location within the tool to the equity section. I hadn't thought about that, but probably worth doing.
Okay. I was just trying to gather more insight because, I do know that from the data that's been presented over the past, majority of the individuals and families who are entering into either the coordinated intake entry process, if not experiencing homelessness, are people of color. And sometimes I know we're trying to, as we move forward, as not only different systems, have a reflection and representation of that across the board. But didn't know whether or not this had anything to, I guess, have impact. If it's more data to be collected rather than being scored. So that's why I was trying to gather in terms of its significance to what HUD is requiring of the COC.
Yeah, I pulled up quickly the HUD 2023 NOFO. And in terms of HUD strategic goals, it says, I'm quoting here from page 7, HUD will pursue 2 overarching priorities focused on increasing equity and improving customer experience across all HUD programs. So there is an increasing efforts on looking at equity and how we are addressing it. We certainly know that the percentage of people coming into seeking assistance from the COC projects are heavily African American, even though African Americans are generally around, I think, 40% or so of Durham's overall population. The percentage of people seeking assistance who are African American generally is 70% or more. So within that, we do have some, substantial issues as a community as to that inequity. But our analysis of how people are served within the COC suggests that we are serving people equitably when they come to us, in that the percentage of the people being referred for rapid rehousing or for permanent supportive housing are consistent with the rate that they are coming into our system. So that's important. A lot of the questions that are on the tool being suggested focus on equity within the particular projects and how the organization is addressing equity concerns.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay. Well, again, take your time with this. And, if you have other questions that come up, email Lloyd or myself, and email any feedback to him by the 31st. And then we'll revisit this scorecard at November's meeting. The last item I have on the agenda for us today is an update on the evaluation of the implementation of written standards and the forms subcommittee. So just to give you all a brief update, Lloyd and I met with Andrea Carey and Elliot Rhodes yesterday from NCCEH, and to see if there's any chance that we can pull some HMIS reports to help us with the evaluation. And we had a great meeting. It does look like, though, that we may be able to pull a few things to help us in the evaluation, but the bulk of what we're going to have to do will probably have to be done by interviewing the projects. So that was really helpful for us to kind of get a grasp around that. As far as us as a subcommittee, Shantae and Vega are on the subcommittee with me. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern because my understanding is that the written standards are currently under review, potentially by the Policy and Planning Committee. So we likely will need to hold off for a little bit because it wouldn't really make sense to start doing an evaluation when the standards might change. So we're probably going to have to hold off for a little bit. Vega and Shantae, I will keep you updated as I have more information. Lloyd, is there anything else that you might want to add that I might not have, kind of covering where things are?
No, I think you summarized it well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So that brings us to the end, unless there is any new business that anyone would like to bring up. Well, I'm sure at this time, I'm sure folks would love to have almost half an hour back of time to do other things. Just a quick update for next month. So next month's meeting is going to be on November 9th. So that is the day of my office's Veterans Day celebration. So I will not be chairing that meeting. I will make arrangements to have coverage in my absence. Of course, you all are invited to come, but if you come, that means the committee work may not get done. So go to the committee meeting. But I will make sure we have coverage, and look forward to seeing you all at the HSAC meeting later this month. And if anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn, followed by a second, we'll adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second.
Eliza has made a motion to adjourn, followed by a second from Angela. Committee, thank you again for your good work. We are adjourned. See you at the HSAC meeting.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Hi, everyone.